Here is what is going viral right now. A single number. FIFA walked away from this World Cup with roughly $8.9 billion. The biggest payday in the tournament's history. And the 16 cities that hosted it got the bills, not the revenue. FIFA keeps essentially all of it. Broadcast, sponsorship, tickets, hospitality, licensing. Every revenue pipe flows toward Zurich, not toward the host. And history is brutal here. Researchers at the University of Toronto found 12 of the last 14 World Cups lost money for their hosts. So this film runs on one rule: follow the dollar. 3 questions for every city: who collects it, who pays it, who keeps it. 16 host cities across 3 countries each wrote their own check to stage a month of the world's undivided attention. We ranked all 16 by one brutal measure: what each city actually got back for every dollar it put in. Number 16 came out ahead. Number 1 spent the most to show almost nothing. This is the ranked World Cup bill. First, the money FIFA collected. Reported take around $8.9 billion. Its own internal target ran higher, near $11 billion. We treat that as a range, not a single number, reported versus target. This channel keeps the two apart on purpose. Against that record haul, the hosts spent on security, policing, transit, retrofits, and fan festivals, costs that stayed strictly local. Before the countdown, one setup: you need the machine that decides who pays. Then we count down 16 to 1. Start in the United States. 11 American cities hosted, and Washington sent FEMA $625 million for security alone. It still was not enough. That money left over $100 million per city uncovered, a collective shortfall up to $250 million. North of the border, the math is worse. Canada's National World Cup bill reached $1.066 billion. Ottawa covered $473 million of it. The rest fell to 2 provinces and 2 cities that never see FIFA's revenue. Canada's own budget watchdog put it in the starkest terms: roughly $82 million of public money for every single game. Here is the structure underneath everything. FIFA collects the tournament revenue centrally, while each host city shoulders the cost of staging it. That is the deal every one of these 16 cities signed. Publicly reported spending, and to be clear, no findings of wrongdoing anywhere. One rule for the numbers ahead: documented results are stamped verified actual. Forecasts are stamped projected. We never blur the two. That matters because most host cities sell themselves with projections economists distrust. Oxford Economics calls the real impacts marginal and short-lived. The pattern is old. 12 of the last 14 World Cups lost money for hosts. We are about to see who broke it and who repeated it. So here is how we scored all 16. Dollars paid, dollars back, and the net, documented where possible, labeled where it is only projected. We begin with the city that got the best deal on earth, and end with the one that spent the most for the least. 16 to 1. The full board: 16 cities, 3 countries. 11 in the United States, 3 in Mexico, 2 in Canada, 1 shared, uneven bill. Ranking runs by value returned per dollar spent. Best deal first. So the countdown climbs toward the worst: number 1, almost nothing back. Quick game before we start. One city spent about $3 million and got hundreds of millions back. Guess which? Lock it in. Number 16, Monterrey, Mexico, and it is the best deal of all 16 host cities, hands down. What Monterrey paid: roughly $3 million in upgrades to its existing stadium. No new arena, no megabuild, no debt. What it got back: an estimated $270 million in economic impact, and more than 10,400 jobs. Do that math and it is staggering. For every dollar Monterrey put in, it saw roughly 90 come back. Nothing else compares. And uniquely, Monterrey was the only host city to actually raise its hotel occupancy, up to 64.2% during the window. Why it worked: a real stadium already built, modest ambitions, and a market that treated the tournament as pure upside, not a status project. This is the version of hosting that pays. Spend almost nothing new, lean on what you already have, and let the crowds do the rest. Monterrey set the bar. The question for the next 15 cities is simple: how far below it did each one land? Number 15, Guadalajara, Mexico, the second best deal on the board, and another lesson in spending small. What Guadalajara paid: about $13 million, over 250 million pesos, on its existing Estadio Akron. Again, no new build. What it got back? An estimated $290 million in impact and nearly 11,000 jobs across the region. That is more than a 20-to-1 return, lower than Monterrey, but still the kind of number most host cities can only dream about. Guadalajara actually posted a higher raw impact than Monterrey. It ranks lower here only because it spent several times more to get there. It is the ranking's first real lesson. The headline impact number means little until you subtract what a city had to spend to earn it. Both Mexican cities share a formula: established venues, restrained budgets, and no attempt to build a legacy the tournament never promised to fund. So far the pattern holds. Spend little, keep the venue you have, come out ahead. The next city tested it inside the United States. Number 14. Seattle, the best performing American host on this board, and the first US case where the numbers actually held up. Seattle's exact public cost is hard to pin to the dollar, reported as tens of millions, with no major new infrastructure built for the event. But its return was measured, not just projected. Early forecasts of $929 million were revised down to about $845. And there were real footprints on the ground. Foot traffic up 17%, with more than 3 million visitors moving through the city. What sets Seattle apart is honesty in the accounting. The number came down, not up, once real data replaced the pre-tournament hype. That downward revision is exactly what economists say almost never gets published. Seattle showing it is a point in the city's favor. Same recipe as the leaders: an existing stadium, restrained spending, and a return that survived contact with an actual accountant. Seattle kept its promise modest and mostly met it. The next city made a much bigger claim, one that is still half projection. Number 13. Atlanta, a modest positive, but the first city where the headline number leans heavily on what has not been proven yet. Atlanta hosted inside its existing stadium with only minimal upgrades, so its incremental public costs stayed low, though never itemized to a single figure. On the return, the state floated a claim above $1 billion. Treat that as a claim, not a measured, audited result. The harder data is narrower: 442,000 hotel room nights, and revenue per available room up about 11%. A separate projection put out-of-state visitor spending at $503 million, a forecast, not a confirmed total. So Atlanta's real, verified wins are the hotel figures. The billion-dollar headline is the part still waiting on an after-the-fact audit. It is a familiar split we will see again and again down this list: firm data on hotels, soft data on the grand total. Atlanta at least published hard hotel numbers. The next city gives us a return figure that is projection top to bottom. Number 12. Los Angeles, likely a positive, but built almost entirely on a forecast, with the public cost never separately disclosed. The venue, SoFi Stadium, was privately financed, and the World Cup-specific public cost for Los Angeles was never broken out on its own. The return is a projection that grew over time, from $594 million up to $892 for LA County. Notice the direction. Unlike Seattle, whose number came down with real data, this one went up before the real data arrived. That does not mean LA lost. A giant market with a private stadium can absolutely win. It just means the win is not yet measured. Economists flag exactly this pattern. Forecasts that rise as the event nears, then quietly shrink once the audits are finally done. Publicly reported spending, projected returns, no findings of wrongdoing. Los Angeles simply has not shown its receipts yet. LA's ledger is still open. The next city closed its books with hard numbers, and one of the strongest verified returns on the board. Number 11. Mexico City, a strong, documented return, tempered by real public infrastructure risk the two smaller Mexican hosts avoided. The famous Estadio Azteca got a renovation estimated between $134 and $150 million, mostly privately funded. What the city got back was measured, not guessed: $548 million in impact and over 21,000 jobs. That is the highest documented return of any Mexican host, and unlike most US cities, it is an actual result, not a forecast. But zoom out. Nationally, Mexico's payoff came in 7% under forecast, $2.54 billion, not the number projected. The reason: tourists stayed away. Roughly 494,000 came, against 836,000 projected. Dynamic pricing priced people out. So Mexico City wins on documented impact, but carries an asterisk: public transit and security costs, and a nation that undershot its own forecast. That closes the Mexican cities, the value champions. From here, the returns get bigger, louder, and far less certain. Number 10 is next. Number 10. Dallas and Arlington, home to 9 matches, huge headline projections, and hotel numbers that are genuinely, verifiably real. Dallas is our first clean example of the softened cost problem. Its World Cup-specific public spending was never itemized as a single figure. The regional return was projected between $1.5 and $2.1 billion, with Arlington's share put near $160 million. But local economists publicly called those headline projections exaggerated, the exact inflation this channel keeps warning you about. The verified part is smaller and sharper. A record $31 million in June hotel revenue, with room rates up 47%. 9 matches drove real, measurable hotel demand. It is the billion-dollar total wrapped around it that has not survived scrutiny. The Dallas pattern rhymes with Atlanta. Trust the hotel receipts. Hold the grand total at arm's length until the audit lands. Dallas at least took the hotel windfall. The next city arranged things so it would barely pay a public cost at all. Number 9. The San Francisco Bay Area, where a clever arrangement shielded the public, but the return stays purely projected. Santa Clara faced roughly $50 million in costs, but a regional host committee agreed to cover all of the city's expenses. On top of that, about $60 million in federal security money flowed in through FEMA and transit funding. That structure is the story. The taxpayer of Santa Clara was largely walled off from the direct bill by design. The return, though, is all forecast. A projected $370 to $620 million across the region. It ranks here because the upside is unconfirmed and the shielding cuts both ways: less public risk, but also a thinner local windfall. Publicly reported spending, an unusual cost-sharing deal, and a projected return still waiting on real numbers. No findings of wrongdoing. The Bay Area protected its taxpayers. The next city could not tell you yet whether its month was worth it at all. Number 8. Boston and Foxborough, 7 matches, real spending, and a verdict that is honestly still uncertain. Economists at Smith College pegged Boston's expenses above $100 million for its role in the tournament. Tiny Foxborough, the small town hosting the games, faced a $7.8 million security bill it openly disputed. The projected return was around $500 million net, a forecast, not a settled figure. The verified signals split. Restaurant and bar spending jumped 28%, the highest of any host, while hotel bookings came in below expectations. That is a genuinely mixed picture. Bars packed, hotels quiet. Which signal dominates the net? No one can yet confirm. So Boston lands in the honest middle. Real costs documented, real activity documented, but the bottom line still genuinely unresolved. Boston's books are still open. The next city buried its World Cup costs inside a budget crowded with 2 other giant events. Number 7. Philadelphia, where the World Cup's true cost is almost impossible to isolate, because 3 mega events shared one budget. 2026 hit Philadelphia with the World Cup, the America 250 celebrations, and a Major League Baseball All-Star game all at once. That is why the public cost is not separately disclosed. A blended budget above $120 million covered all 3 events together. There was also a separate $500 million airport investment, infrastructure that outlives the tournament and cannot be charged to it alone. The projected return, $770 million, 6,660 jobs, and $51 million in tax revenue, all forecast, not yet actual. With costs blended across 3 events and returns still projected, Philadelphia is the hardest city on this board to score cleanly. Publicly reported, blended spending, projected returns, no findings of wrongdoing. Philadelphia's real World Cup ledger may never fully separate out. Philadelphia's numbers are a tangle. The next city gives us the cleanest documented cost of any American host. Number 6. Miami, 7 matches including the 3rd place game, and the clearest documented public cost of any U.S. host city. Miami-Dade County committed up to $46 million, as much as $21 million in cash, plus $25 million in services. The city of Miami added $12.5 million of its own. Unlike most hosts, these figures are actually itemized. The projected return runs wide. A FIFA-linked study claims $920 million to $1.3 billion. A more conservative Oxford estimate puts direct impact nearer $650 million, still a forecast, but a far cooler one. So Miami's value is easy to read on the cost side, and blurry on the return side, clean receipts, foggy payoff. That clarity earns Miami a mid-table spot. We know almost exactly what it paid. We only estimate what it made. Miami showed its receipts. The next city made one of the loudest promises of all, and then watched its own hoteliers walk it back. Number 5. Houston. A giant projection that the city's own tourism industry publicly called overpromised after the final whistle. Like several U.S. hosts, Houston's World Cup-specific public cost is not well documented. No clean, isolated figure was ever released. The headline was enormous. A projected $1.5 billion in impact, pitched as the equivalent of 5 Super Bowls. Then reality. After the tournament, Houston hoteliers said the event overpromised. Demand fell short of the billion-dollar hype. This is why we never report that $1.5 billion as achieved. It is a forecast the market itself publicly walked back. Houston is the countdown's clearest case of the gap between the pitch and the payoff, the promise loud, the receipts quiet. Publicly reported ambitions, a projection the industry disputes, and no findings of wrongdoing. Houston's real return remains unproven. Houston overpromised on the return. The next city overspent on the cost, and its stadium may soon sit empty. Number 4. Kansas City. A small market that spent big public money on a stadium its own team may soon abandon. Kansas City's public commitment reached roughly $165 million across 2 states, a heavy bill for a mid-sized market. Missouri alone poured $42.5 million into Arrowhead, a stadium the Chiefs have signaled they may leave. The rest stacked up fast, $15 million for the host committee, plus Kansas contributing $28 million and another 10 on top. The promised return, $653 million and 650,000 visitors. But that figure is projection only. We do not report that $653 million as earned. It is a forecast and proven, and the market here is small. Stack it up. High public spend, a modest local economy, and a marquee venue that could fall dormant. The risk here is real. Kansas City bet big on a stadium that may go quiet. The next entry hosted the final and still booked a documented loss. Number 3. New York and New Jersey. They hosted the final itself, the biggest U.S. gross, and a documented net loss. New Jersey's public commitment ran about $120 million, security plus a new pedestrian bridge to the stadium. New York City added roughly $90 million, including $12 million just in police overtime for the tournament. And here is the slam. New York City is documented to spend about $40 million more than it gets back. Confirmed net loss. Fans felt it too. A $150 round-trip train, normally under $13, while New Jersey Transit ran a $200 million deficit. New Jersey did capture the biggest American haul, $2.1 billion in group play gross, though below the $3.3 billion projected. So the Metro won the spectacle, the final 645,000 fans, record gross, while the city itself booked a measured loss. New York proves a host can win the headlines and still lose on paper. The last 2 cities lost far worse, and they are both in Canada. Number 2. Toronto, where the cost of hosting exploded roughly tenfold, for a return its own analysts called little economic gain. Toronto's total cost reached about $380 million, ballooned from an early estimate of just $30 to $45 million. Upgrades to BMO Field alone ran $146 million, $123 from the city, $23 from the club. That is roughly a tenfold overrun, one of the most dramatic cost blowouts of any host city on this entire board. The projected upside, as much as $940 million across the Greater Toronto area, but that is a forecast, not a result. And the early reality undercut it. Data through the first 2 weeks showed Toronto making little measurable economic gain. A tenfold cost overrun against early evidence of little gain is close to the worst possible combination on this list. Toronto spent about 10 times its estimate for almost nothing measurable. And somehow, one city on this board did even worse. Last guess before number 1. This city's bill ran past $700 million for just 7 games. Guess the net taxpayer loss. Number 1. Vancouver, the city that spent the most, for one of the least measurable returns of all 16 hosts. Vancouver's gross cost ballooned to between $685 and $729 million, up from a much lower early estimate. The part that actually hits residents, a net taxpayer cost of $90 to $114 million, the highest documented public loss here. Canada's budget office pinned roughly $578 million of that spending to just 7 games in the city. The promised return leaned on the long term, around $1 billion in GDP spread across the tournament and the following 5 years. But that upside is not clearly realized, a 5-year forecast against a bill residents are paying in full, right now. That is why Vancouver is number 1, the biggest documented net loss, a runaway cost, and a payoff still stuck in the future tense. 16 cities, 16 ledgers. Now stand back because the ranking top to bottom tells one very consistent story. Look at who won. The 3 best deals were all in Mexico and the Pacific Northwest, cities that spent little and measured what they got. Look at who lost. The bottom of the board, Vancouver, Toronto, New York, is where the biggest spending met the hardest documented losses. The dividing line is not glamour or size. It is restraint. Cities that spent little on venues came out ahead. Big builders fell behind. That is the same pattern the University of Toronto found. 12 of the last 14 World Cups lost money for their hosts. This one rhymed. And through all 16, one flow never reversed. Revenue climbed toward FIFA. Costs settled onto cities. Privatized gains, socialized costs. FIFA's own take confirms it. Roughly $8.9 billion reported, an $11 billion target, collected centrally, while 16 cities paid to host. Now the honest counterweight, because the story is not all one-sided, and this channel does not do one-sided. Some cities genuinely won. Monterrey, Guadalajara, Mexico City, and Seattle posted real, measured returns on modest, disciplined spending. And notice where their upside came from. Not from FIFA sharing revenue, but from what those cities chose not to spend in the first place. The losers, meanwhile, mostly share one habit. They treated a 1-month tournament as a reason to spend for a generation. So the verdict kept neutral. Hosting the World Cup rarely pays. It can, but only for the cities disciplined enough to barely spend. That is not an accusation. It is an accounting. Publicly reported spending, projected and verified returns. No findings of wrongdoing anywhere on this board. And plenty is not settled. The projected returns, LA, Dallas, Houston, Philadelphia, are still waiting on their after-the-fact audits. We will update the board when the real numbers land, because the money story does not end when the trophy gets lifted. One last before and after. The pitch to all 16 cities. Prosperity, jobs, a global spotlight. The verified delivery, mostly costs unevenly returned. The uncomfortable truth is that both can be real. The tournament was a genuine spectacle, and, for most hosts, a losing financial bet. Every number on this ranking is sourced and dated on screen. The order is ours. The figures are theirs. Check every one. If this breakdown earned it, subscribe. We trace the money behind the biggest stories, verified, labeled, and ranked every single week. This one lives in our Follow the Money playlist, next to the $13 billion World Cup that started this whole trail. 16 cities paid. FIFA collected roughly $8.9 billion. Now you know exactly what each one got back. This is the viral feed.